My name's Anne from Orchid Systems, and today I'm going to be running through Info Explorer. Just as a bit of background, we have our modules running in over 5,000 sites around the world. And by around the world, we have our modules running in over 60 countries. And on average, most sites have two Orchid modules that they have installed. We are supported by over 400 business partners around the world. We're based in Sydney, Australia, and at this stage have earned over 10 industry awards for our modules. We have 13 integrated modules, and by integrated modules, I mean they are developed in the Sage 300 SDK and support all the standard Sage 300 SDK utilities, for example, dump and load, and support the same reporting utilities and work with the same reporting dictionary. We've been in business for over 25 years, and all our modules are about improving efficiency and productivity for Sage 300 users. I mentioned we've got 13 modules, and they fall into these 5 main categories. In collaboration and intelligence, we have Info Explorer, our cost-effective business intelligence tool, which is what I'll be going through in some detail in this webinar. We also have Notes and Document Management Link, which allow you to attach documents or link to notes in a context-sensitive way around the associated Sage 300 screen and data. In automation and productivity, we have Process Scheduler, which allows you to schedule repetitive tasks within Sage 300. For example, data integrity checks, dumps and loads, or opening and closing fiscal periods. If you're using Report Runner, which is our utility which allows you to create menus of crystal reports and financial reports and store the parameters the way you wish to run those reports. If you're using Report Runner, Process Scheduler is able to schedule and email out crystal reports and financial reports, which have been set up in Report Runner. In tailoring your system and integration, we have Extender, which allows for cost-effective customizations of the Sage 300 processes. It also allows for enabling alerting and logging. So, for example, you can alert somebody when the customer's credit limit's changed, or you can just log the fact who changed the credit limit from what to what. And you can also do customizations which include creating tables in the Sage 300 database. We also have data views, which improves ease of reporting across the Sage 300 optional tables. And we have optional tables, which is the ability to create additional tables in Sage 300 linked to optional fields. And it's very good for example, to be used with budgeting. In streamlining financial processes, we have EFT processing, which supports electronic funds transfers for your customers if you're doing direct debits, for your vendors for payments to vendors, and also if you're using US payroll or Canadian payroll for paying employees. We also have inter-entity trade, which automates the transactions between companies if you have companies which are buying and selling goods and services between each other. So AP to AR or AP to AR or AR to AP, OE to PO, PO to OE. These transactions can be automated. So when the source transaction is entered, the target can be automated. Or if you've got groups of companies who are buying or paying bills on behalf of each other, for example, one company pays the phone bill but needs to allocate some of that expense to another company, inter-entity transactions will automate the loan account entries between companies for you. And finally, in operations management, we have return material authorizations and repair tracking, which allows you to have a single document which collects all the information you need to know about your repairs or your returns. And from a single document, you can create credit notes or replacement orders or vendor returns, depending what you need to do for your returns. And you can do fault code tracking and workflow stage tracking. And we have bin tracking, which allows you to subdivide an IC location into multiple bins and to track IC item quantities by bin within an IC location. But today I'm going to be running through Info Explorer. Info Explorer is an ideal tool if you have customers which have to deal with a lot of reports. For example, sales reporting by customer and by item, and they need to see that report in many different ways: grouped by salesperson, grouped by customer group, grouped by territory, or perhaps filtered for, or filtered by a particular IC category. And so what you find is you have multiple reports all working on the same data. So Info Explorer, because it's a drag and drop and slice and dice tool that allows you to drill into the data and change the way you're viewing the data, it can often replace multiple two-dimensional extracts. You can also use Info Explorer to assist you with your budget creation and budget write-back. So for example, very easily you could do a top-down or a bottom-up budget, start your budget with last year's actuals, increase by 10%, and then update through to the GL if you're doing GL budget, or update through to optional tables if you're doing a customer item budget or some other form of budgeting. Info Explorer is our tool that we have developed to cater for these sorts of business needs. So by providing information and the correct information at the right time to people, you can improve decision making. And it can save a lot of time during the budgeting and forecasting process by helping you develop and calculate and work out what the budget should be. And you can in many cases, you can replace many crystal reports with a single cube, because it allows the operator to filter or slice and dice or drag and drop the rows and columns to view the data in the way that they need to, rather than having crystal reports written for each and every different view of the data that you need. And Info Explorer also allows you to drill into the underlying totals, so the data that makes up the totals, and drill through into the underlying transactions that are in Sage 300. Therefore, cutting down time when you're needing to investigate why a certain figure looks a certain way. At a summary level, you can drill straight down to the underlying transaction to see what made it up. We also have a version of Info Explorer which can be deployed free of charge, and it does have some limitations, and I'll run through those limitations when I'm discussing Info Explorer. So this is what Info Explorer looks like. This slice and dice or two-dimensional view of the data down below. And it's showing in this case that my item sales grouped by customer group, grouped by salesperson. And we're looking at the net sales and the quantity and the margin percent. So very easily, and what I'll be showing you shortly, I could drag the item number away and just see my margin percent and net sales and quantity by customer group, or by dragging the customer group away by salesperson. Or if I wanted to see the individual customers, I could drag down customer. So very easily, this one particular view can show us many, many different aspects of this particular data. And you can add formulas, as I have done with margin percent. It's the cube, not the query, that's calculating the margin percent. And as you can see, you can apply conditional formatting. So over 60%, the margin percent is green. If it's less than 50%, it's red, and it's between 50 and 60, it's orange. So to quickly let you find exceptions or problems in your data. And from within the cube, you can drill back into the Sage 300 screen. So up the top left-hand side, we're showing a screen where we've drilled into the IC item and looking at the item card. So I didn't have to go into Sage 300, find the item card in the menu, and then open it up. And you can see we can either represent the data in these two-dimensional views, or we can graphically represent the data, and we can group a number of different views and graphs together onto a dashboard. But rather than just talk to this flat screen, let me go ahead and flick into my Sage 300, and I'll demonstrate this for you. So when you're running Info Explorer, you can either run it from the Sage 300 desktop, as I am going to do here, or you could run it from your normal desktop or your start bar anyway, any which way that you like to run Info Explorer, because when you're doing your analysis, your drag and drop, you are not using a Sage 300 LAN pack until such time as you drill into the underlying screen. But I'll make that clearer when I'm actually demonstrating that a little later. So I'm just going to launch in Info Explorer from my desktop. And the first thing I'm going to do is just create a new cube to show you how easily that can be done. So I'm going to click on Create Cube. You can either, if you're using our other module, optional tables, you can pre-store queries in optional tables, or we can just go straight to the database and click Next and specify what database that we want you to connect to. Always test your connection, and then go ahead and go next. I could have connected to any database. In this case, I am connecting to a Sage 300 database, but it could be any SQL database, or in fact, any ODBC database. But all our examples are set up on Sage 300 companies. So in the sample cube, what I'm going to do is just do a quick cube on my accounts receivable outstanding transactions. And I'm going to link that through to my AR customer so I can see the customer's name and get some fields off the customer. So just like you do in your crystal reporting, you can drag in your tables, you can link the tables across. So I've done an inner join between my customer from my accounts receivable outstanding balance table and the customer. And now I can choose some fields from both of these tables. So in this particular, and you can see it's generating me the SQL statement as I go, but I could come in here and just type the SQL statement if I wanted to, or I could paste a statement in if I already have a SQL statement in a crystal report or from my management studio. So the fields I want to see is the, let's say that I want to see the customer number, I want to see the name of the customer, I also want to see the customer group and the account set, the ID account set. And the reason I'm choosing those is because I want to, group my reports by account sets or by groups and to see information in totals by that. But from the invoice or the outstanding transaction or the open transaction, I want to see the customer number. Oh, and I actually don't. I don't want to double that one up. I want to see the date of the transaction, which is called invoice date. I want to see the amount of the invoice in home currency. I also want to see how much of that is due. So, net of payments that have already been applied. And I just want to pick up the date of the invoice. And I can go to the data tab and just see what data that I've built up so far. So I see I've got my customer code name, the group, and so on. And if that's all the data that I want to see, I could go File, OK. And Info Explorer will build you a cube on that particular data. You can, a function key F2 and rename that. So I would normally rename that to AR data or AR transactions. And now I can start looking at my data. So the black boxes here are dimensions. and those have the string values or the things that you analyze by. So I want to see my customer number as a row. Perhaps I want to see my my customer numbers grouped by customer group code, and I want to see as my columns the document year. So whenever you add a date, it'll automatically add in for you the year and the month. So I could look at by quarterly or monthly, or the individual date, but I'm just going to look at it annually at this stage. And I'm going to look at the total of the invoice and the amount due at this stage. So with very little effort, I've got a report, as it were, a two-dimensional report showing you my customers grouped by retail code by group code, retail or wholesale. And if I go onto the display tab, I can say show my row totals. So it's showing me the total per retail and total for wholesale. And from here, I could, collapse or expand. So if I only wanted to see in total, or selectively expand which groups that I want to see. So once you've got your data in a cube, then I would go ahead normally and save that. And I could now drag and drop or group by any of my other columns. But if I got this far and I suddenly remembered, no, I really wanted to have the salesperson in here as well, I can just go back to the query builder and tell it to include the salesperson, which is on the customer table. If I needed to drag in another table, I could. So I'm just going to scroll down in here. Code salesperson 1, let's say. So if I go file OK, and now if I refresh, you'll see that it brings into the cube the salesperson 1, and I can now drag and drop that for analysis purposes as well. So perhaps I want to group the customer within the customer by salesperson, or perhaps I wanted to do it like this and have the salesperson, then the group code, then the customer number. So by default, it is bringing through and totaling and grouping the data directly for me from any of the facts that I have included in this particular cube. But I am able to do additional calculations in the cube. And any calculations that I can't do at an individual record level, I would do in the cube. For example, and I'm just going to simplify this view a bit and just look at my customer number. If I wanted to add a new calculation which showed me what percentage of the total was my invoices, so my total invoices in functional currency. So I can go and edit a field and create a new fact, and this is going to be my total percent by column. And in this particular case, it's going to be a sum of my total invoices in functional currency, and I'm going to display that as a percentage of the column. So when I save that, it's straight away going to add that fact to my view. And I've now got a total percent per column. So it's showing me that customer 1100 total invoices is 7.7%, whereas 1200 is 24%, and so on. And let me just get rid of this functional amount to make the view a little bit clearer. And you can see I've got this total percent per column for all the years that I'm currently displaying, and in fact the total, if that's what I wanted to do. And I could use this column, either this column or any of my other columns, to sort my rows. So if I wanted to see my customers sorted ascending in terms of the percentage of column, or perhaps even descending, we could do it that way as well. And now if I was to perhaps drag, instead of looking at my customers, I was to look at my group code. And I've only got 2 groups, so it's going to be a little bit obvious, but it's, this total percent per column is always being recalculated based on whatever your rows are at that time. So, and once I've got a view that I like, I could rename that view and give it a description. But let's say, for example, I wanted to have a different view, which was grouping my instead of looking at the group code, I was looking at by customer name or customer code. I could create a copy of it, rename it. So this is going to be by customer. And then I would swap these dimensions and say I'm not interested in the group code, I'm only interested in the customer code. And now I'm seeing, on this particular view, which I should rename, I'm seeing it by group code, and this view, I'm seeing it by customer code. So you can use these different views to display the data based on a different, rows and columns combination, or it could indeed be based on a different filter. Because what you could do is apply a pre-filter. So if I wanted to see, sorry, I just inadvertently sorted by name, ascending or descending. If I wanted to only see my customers in my retail group, I could say, go to the retail group and just turn on retail only. And that's a good thing to do only if retail was one of the, that I'm displaying my customer group here, because then I can see that I'm looking at retail only, like this. But if I didn't want to have my group code here, if my group code was up the top, because it's in italics, I know that I'm filtering by it. But what I don't know is what group I'm looking at. So it's better to do that sort of filter in a visible way. And for us, it's the pre-filter. So I can add a pre-filter where I could say where my customer group code equals, and I can choose my group code that I want to see. And as you can see, it displays that sort of filter down the bottom. I'm just going to create yet another view, a copy of this particular view. And this case, I'm going to simplify the view even further. And I'm going to put my salesperson down as columns. I'm going to get rid of my customer number. I'm going to disable that filter. And I'm going to get rid of that as well, and my totals. So the reason for this is I'm trying to create a very simple view that I want to make a graph. So if I wanted this to be a graph, I can just say create a new chart, and it creates it off your currently based view. I can go, change it to a line chart or change it to a pie chart, whatever was the kind of chart that you wanted. And if I was happy, I'd go save as and give it, this is my salesperson. But now that I've got that chart, I could still come here and, change it. If I decided, no, it was better represented as a bar chart or as a line chart, then I could do whichever one I thought was better. And I can have as many charts as I want, as many views as I want, which is a different collection of data, and or with different applied filters. And we can also have dashboards. So we can create a new dashboard. And all a dashboard is a collection of the views that you already have. So you can specify, in this case, it's defaulting to a 3x3 dashboard, but I could remove columns or add columns, and depending on your screen side, have as many dashboards as you want on that particular cube. So now that I've shown, creating a cube from scratch, although you can do it, it's not necessarily the way that you need to start. Because what you can do is go to our sample cubes, and by module, if you either select a module or if you're selecting all, it shows you the sample cubes that we have in that particular module. So module by module, we have a whole lot of cubes, or you can just click any, and that would show you all the cubes. So probably there's a cube which has a query in the area that you're looking for already. So all you need to do is have a look down in this cube, decide the one that you need, download that, change the connection details to point to your database, and click refresh. So just showing you all the different sample cubes we have. And an example of one of our our sample cubes, which I just want to go through, is this particular one, OE sales by customer and item, because it's got a lot more things in it that I don't want to set up manually to show you through, but just to show you some of the other features of Info Explorer. So as we saw from the screenshot, you are able to apply conditional formatting. In this case, we did traffic light formatting. Greater than 60 is green, between 60 and 50 is orange, and less than 50 was red, as you can see here. So you can do that on any particular fact, or you could apply a particular style to the whole cube. And here's an example of a dashboard which has got 4 particular views on it, which has been built up from these views that we have down the left-hand side. Now, margin percent was a formula that's been added on the cube. The individual margin amount per invoice can be calculated on a row by row level, but margin percent needs to be calculated relative to the totals and what you're currently viewing, which is an ideal kind of calculation for the cube to do. So previously, to add margin percent, we would have come here and added margin percent and put in a formula saying if the net sales value is 0, then make it 0. Otherwise, it's the margin value divided by the net sales value times by 100. And that's what that margin percent formula or calculation has been done. So you can add as many formulas as you want in your cube, and then they appear just as a normal fact, but they are recalculated on the fly. So I'm currently looking at my sales, net sales and margin, and my sales rank, and I'll show you that formula shortly, by customer number. But if I was to drag item number down, I will now be seeing the margin percent of this item within this customer. And if I turned on my row totals, I'm now seeing the customer's margin percent within in total. The sales rank formula is a typical cube type formula that you often work with, which allows you to do a descending rank or an ascending rank of a particular fact. So because I did descending rank, then I can sort it in an ascending manner to get my highest ranked customer or item. So just to show the sorting by a calculated field, if I was to put my customer number up, and in this particular case, I'm going to say sort my item number by my sales rank in the year 2019. So I'm seeing the 0 ones first, but 1, 2, 3, and so on. Or I could sort by sales rank in total. So this is the sum of 2019 and 2020, and I can sort my item in according to the total. So in total, my item sales, this item is the largest in 2020, and it's the largest in 2019 as well. But this item, for example, is 3 in 2019 and 2 in 2020. So you can, the formulas that you add get calculated per all the different column values that you're displaying and all the different row values that you're displaying, and get recalculated on the fly. So if I was then to drag down the customers who bought these particular items, it's now ranking the customer within item and the item still within the total. Filtering. You can filter the data that you're viewing in a number of different ways. I showed you the way to filter if you're wanting to filter on the underlying transaction. But you could also, for short dimensions, it's very quick and easy to filter using the column headers or the row headers. So if I only wanted to see my 2020 data, I could then just filter using that. And in this case, it's a good use of this filter because I can see that value as a column header. And it makes sense when you look at this data, you know that the year is filtered and you're looking at the value 2020. I'll just show you the styles. So how we create styles and how we apply it to facts. So in this case, I created some simple styles: traffic light green, traffic light red, traffic light orange. And then for this particular fact, for our margin percent, I applied the style to that. So I said in the rules for margin percent, if it's less than 50, make it go red. If it's between 50 and 60, make it go orange. And if it's greater than 60, make it go green. And I could be applying my different formatting either to all values in the, to all your facts or individual facts, depending on what you're trying to do. Another cube that I wanted to show you, which shows some other features of Info Explorer, is this ability to write a query that goes across multiple databases using SQL's join or union join. So this particular query, and it is a sample cube which is on the website, it joins any two Sage 300 companies, and you can edit the query to add yet another Sage 300 company, and also to say which Sage 300 companies you're doing. So the sample data is Sam Inc. and Sam Ltd, but in my case, I'm combining Orc Ltd and Orc Inc. 2. So you can see across my accounts, which are common, they're not mapped, it's a common account number range. I have got my balances for the fiscal years by company. And if I needed to, I could drag and drop the rows and columns or the other segmentation of my chart of accounts. So if I did want to see, let's look at this consolidated income statement. So here we've just chosen the account type income statement, and we're seeing all our accounts grouped by account group. But if I wanted to see what divisions or what regions or what entities these transactions were going to, I could drag and drop these dimensions either as a row or as a column or both. So by dragging division beside my company dimension, I'm now seeing the split of my sales to the account with no division, to the commercial division and the retail division. And I could have put it as rows as well, or I could take region, for example, and put region as my rows. So now I'm seeing the split by both division and region, or two segments of the general ledger, and so on. If I had more segments, I could drag and drop those down too, and see the split across the particular dimensions or dimension values for those accounts. And the final example cube that I want to show you is how you can use Info Explorer for your budgeting. So I'm going to open up this sample cube, which is also a samples cube that you can download from the website. And this is very similar to the one I've just shown you on the GL, except it's on one company database only. And it is the general ledger chart of accounts, but we also have, it's limited to 2 years, 2019 and 2020, and we have both the actual and the budget data. So this particular view is on my actuals, but I do have a view here which is showing me my GL budget entry, and this particular view is one that I would use if I wanted to key in my budgets at an account by account, month by month level. So I could go ahead here and change my budget for January 2020 for this particular account. I could change it to $100 or minus $100 because this is a sales account. So you can use Info Explorer to key in manually, account by account, bottom up, if that's what you need to do. But what you can also do is use Info Explorer if you have purchased the Info Explorer with budget right back, if you have to do top-down budgeting. So this particular view is the one that I want to use. So I'm going to do a budget across my revenue and my cost of sales accounts. And although what we can see here is some just over 10 accounts, really what makes this up is multiple accounts, because we've got all the divisions and all the regions within these accounts that is adding up to these particular totals. So if you've got the Info Explorer license with WriteBack, you have this tab called Worksets. And what that enables you to do is to create as many worksets as you want. And a workset is really a copy paste special values in a way, based on the original data. I can rename that to make it more meaningful. So this is my original budget. And in my particular example, what I want to do, I want to take last year's actuals and put that in the same spread that it is in my last year's actuals. I want to apply that to my 2020 budget. And then I want to increase my sales by 10% and decrease my cost of sales by 5%, as an example. So if all I need to do that is to have a workset active, and then I can key in the value that I want, either at an individual cell level, by account, by month and year, or at a total level, and tell it how to spread back. So in my case, I'm going to key in this 15 million, but I want it to spread back proportionately, but not based on the accounts that make this up, but based on the accounts that make this up. So I need to change my version to actual, and I need to change my fiscal year to 2019. And now if I key in my value of 15 million, 723,651.57 and press enter, it's going to prorate that number back to all the budget accounts, all the accounts that make up that particular total, but using the spread based on last year's actuals. And I've applied conditional formatting to my amended data. So anything where I've amended the budget data, I've made it go this pink color. So I know which data values I have amended. So now if I wanted to take my sales, which is currently at 26 million, and up it by 10%, rather than having to key that full number, I could now change my spread method to a percentage increase or decrease. And I'm just going to up this by 10%. So from 26 million, it'll go up by 10% to 28 million. And let's say I want to take my cost of sales and I want to decrease that by 5%. So by entering -5, it will reduce my cost of sales by 5%. And if this was the budget that I was happy with, and this is the budget, if I wanted somebody else to check this, I could save the cube, email them the cube and say, hey, have a look at that budget, is that okay? Or if this is the budget that I want to go with, when I click right back, it's going to update through to my GL budgets because this cube has been configured to update my GL. So although I'm seeing some 10 or 15 amended numbers here, underneath this are multiple accounts and multiple months, so January through to December. So the sample write-back cubes that we have on our website, if I just go back to my download of sample cubes, and I filter by write back. We have 3 write back samples, which allows you to write back into IC, the item to projected sales, which is done on a monthly basis. So you can update the budgeted projected sales. If you are using that for purchase orders, for example, you can update it from a cube. The write back to the GL budget is what I've just demonstrated. And the write back to the customer and item budget is if you're using Orchid's optional tables to store your budgets, which you would do, for example, there is no place in Sage 300 to save a customer item budget. So you could use the optional tables module and then use Info Explorer to write back your calculated budget into the InfoSet data to make it available for reporting in your, against your actuals in your Sage 300 company. I realized when I was talking away, I didn't actually ever get round to doing any drill down. Because I didn't show you drill down or drilled through. So let me just quickly show you that. So when you're on any cube, for example, if I'm on this customer cube and you're looking at a total, if you right-hand mouse button and drill down into that, it will show you the underlying query, all the records that were made up, that were sort of totaled into that particular total. And from here, you can copy and paste into Excel if you need to get that data into Excel for some reason. But you also can do a drill through. And when you're drilling through, what you're doing is going back into the underlying Sage 300 company and opening up the screen from that data entry. So if I was to drill through to my IC items, or if I was on a customer record, let's say here, I could drill through to my AR customer activity. So the first time I do this from within a cube, it's going to ask me to log into the Sage session. And at this stage, if I didn't already have Sage open in the background, at this stage, it's only now that it's using a Sage 300 LAN pack, and it's opening up the AR customer inquiry for that particular customer. Now, the kind of things you can drill into from a cube is a sales order number, and it'll open up the OE order screen, a sales invoice number, and it'll open up the OE invoice screen. Or if you're using AR invoices, it could drill into the AR invoice batch where the invoice was posted. You can open up GL batches where the GL transaction was posted. And I think this cube here will allow me to do that. I think I've got the detail. So if I let's have a look at this trial balance, simplify it somewhat. Let's look at only one particular company. And if I was to, let's just look at some revenue only. And if I was to drag down my batch entry, so this is showing me, all the batches that were posted to this particular account in 2019 and 2020. But if I was to drill into this one, so it's going to drill through to the GL batch 9 and entry 1. My other drilling option was to open up the account card to see the setup of the account. And here it's opened up batch 9 with entry number 1. So those were really the main features that I wanted to run through in Info Explorer. So I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation and just remind you that we have all these different categories of sample cubes. So there's probably not an area which you have to write from scratch. They're always a good place to start from. They've often got formulas added, conditional formatting, and all sorts of underlying tables grouped together for you for that sort of analysis. So I encourage you to have a look through those, download them, attach them to your database, and have a look, see what they provide. So, a question. Did I mention Info Explorer Lite? Yes, I did, but I didn't remember to tell you about it in more detail. So Info Explorer Lite is our free version of Info Explorer. So you can download and install that at no charge. You can download all the sample cubes to work with Info Explorer and attach them to your database or your customer's database, click refresh, and away you go. And all what I've been showing you, you can do with Info Explorer Lite, except for the following 4 things. On worksets, you don't get worksets at all. So if you're using the free version of Info Explorer, you're not able to do budgeting or budget write back. You're also not able to export your data to CSV, HTML, or Excel. And you're also not able to create your own cubes or go into the properties of an existing cube or query builder of an existing cube and add a new column or add a new table and a column from your new table. So you're not allowed to amend, you cannot amend the sample cubes. You can only work with the sample cubes that are up on the website. So most of these are sample cubes in all the different modules. Any other questions? Well, if there's no more questions, thank you very much for attending this session. We will be distributing the recording probably tomorrow and sending it through to you all. And also take a look on our website for other videos that might be of interest to you. So thank you very much for attending, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks.